It's Sports by the Book at the South Point Studio. Here's Jeff Parles and Alex White.
Good morning. Welcome in. It's Sports by the Book, South Point Studio. They're underway at Royal True, and I'm Jeff Parles.
I'm Alex White. We do have a very good golf tournament going on. We'll give you some updates right about now.
That we will.
Justin Thomas with the lead.
Yeah, how about that? We didn't mention JT at all in the preview. Not surprising we didn't mention him at all. It really hasn't shown the ability to realistically compete at a high level over the last almost 2 years now for JT. Fires a 3 under. Course is playing very difficult so far. Thomas 3 under. Alex Noren, a name that a lot of people like betting, 2 under. Nikolai Hogard, Justin Rose, another name that we didn't hear a lot of. Rose was like 150 to 1 at a lot of places yesterday. 2 under. Russell Henley. And now 2 guys on the course. A different Canadian that was mentioned yesterday, Mackenzie Hughes, at 2 under, and Xander Schauffele, of course, won the PGA Championship 2 months ago, 2 under through 8. Right now, only 18 guys under par on the tournament. So, of course, playing a little difficultly. A lot of bomb scores early in the day. Rory McIlroy, 7 over par. A little jarring on that. Victor Hovland, 4 over for him. Aberg, 4 over. So a lot of bloated scores out there so far today, Alex.
Still a lot of time to go. Tiger, the last time I looked, he was doing pretty well. I think just 1 over.
Not anymore, unfortunately, for our friend Tiger Woods. 4 over. He's bogeyed 3 over in the last 3. So good start, but falling off. It's time, unfortunately, other than the Masters, where that course, again, we talked about it with Brady. You and I talked about it yesterday. That course history is so important. It made sense that is inevitably going to be his final major win back in 2019. Just that, again, weather also for all the surgeries he's had. Horrible for him. Chilly and rainy.
Yeah,
not the best you could ask for there across the pond.
Should bring up Brady Cannon's long shot with Griot. He is actually 1 under through 6 right now. So tied at 7th. We'll see how he finishes through. 300 to 1, Brady.
Griot, Koepka, Lowry, Jason Day, Adam Scott. Those are a few of the names sitting at 1 under right now. Again, early on. Right now, Scotty Scheffler, who has just not seen the golf course yet, 4 to 1 to win right now. You're betting favorite. Schauffele's dumped down to be the second favorite at plus 450. JT at 10 to 1. Shane Lowry at 14 to 1, and then Koepka rounding out your top 5 at 16 to 1. So a lot of opportunities still to go here if you want to bet this thing in game. And
here comes Scotty, right? Only through 6 holes, and he's even right now.
Yeah.
So we'll see how the rest of the day goes.
A very unexciting round for Scheffler, which on that course today, perfectly solid. Nothing wrong with that. If that's the route that Scotty goes today, I think he'd be pretty happy with an even par round with the way that the course is played, especially on the back 9. Just one last thing on the golf. We'll do what we can over the weekend. Again, timing of this here on the West Coast, not the best for Saturday. So we'll keep you acclaimed if there's any plays that we have over the next few days that we end up firing on. We'll let you know. We'll let you know on tomorrow. We're an abbreviated show because Gone Racing's actually going tomorrow now instead of today. And then Saturday, Alex will be here holding down the fort for us here on a Saturday in July. We're almost at the end of July, folks. It'll be July 20th on Saturday.
And baseball back tomorrow. So I am looking forward to the next few days. We got more action to bet on daily besides just looking ahead to our futures, which I am excited to get to this division today, though, as well.
We will get to the AFC South in a second. There are some, actually, Chris just put up the baseball numbers for tomorrow, it looks like. So be on the lookout tomorrow and also on Punchlines. And maybe, who knows, when we take a break, maybe we'll eyeball it, see if there's anything that pops for us after we look at a few teams in the AFC South, as that's where we're going to start here today in our NFL previews right out of the gate.
Any Summer League mention, since it is right down the street from us, that comes next. Too late. We got the football.
I mean, I don't have it. I don't have any bets on the Summer League today. Bronny James made a 3-pointer yesterday. That was really the news that the national media went on with. I just before we get into the Texans, who had an amazing offseason, it's really a hard, unless if you get the early numbers, it's very hard to bet the summer league because those numbers move. Because if they're off, see ya, they're gone and they're put up at one moment, they're gone 90 seconds later at most. Again, I haven't made a summer league bet this year, which is actually a good thing. Good thing. I haven't said that. I haven't been able to say that in the past, but I just haven't really found much. Really, other than the Bronny James stuff, which I think it's a lot of hoopla about nothing more so than anything. We knew he wasn't ready to be an NBA player. He's going to play.
He looked a lot more comfortable yesterday, though, just in general. So not just talking about the three-pointer, but did make a few and looked more comfortable, which is the most important.
Yeah, I think it's just the natural thing of just playing more games. He'll be in El Segundo at the beginning of the year. I think everyone realizes that at this point. And the only other thing that I really even paid attention to is Alex Sarzo for 15 game yesterday.
Yeah, he
or
took
2 days ago.
He took some attention off of Bronny, that's for sure. But to your point, takes a lot of work. My dad, Kenny White, he is handicapping the summer league and going through every player, giving them a power rating, and it's a lot of work. You're doing a whole nother set of teams besides the normal NBA teams.
Absolutely, it's hard, very, very difficult to put it lightly with these summer league games. All right, you already saw the football go across the screen, so I think we can go ahead, and we are doing today the entire AFC South. So today is a whole football day today, folks. So if we this is the way we want to do it, especially with tomorrow being an abbreviated show. We want to be able to get both of our plays here for this division, and we start with the Texans, who had a loud offseason. Maybe not the best offseason in the NFL, but a loud one, where they go out, they make the big trade for Stephon Diggs, they sign Danielle Hunter. They get Joe Mixon in a trade, even though they probably could have got him in free agency from Cincy. Denico Autry is an in-division swipe on the defensive line for Houston. And if you look at the departures, there's not too much on the back end. Blake Cashman had a Pro Bowl year a year ago. Have to look to replace him. Malik Collins replaced by Autry. Gennard replaced by Hunter. Really just a flipperoo when it's all said and done. For Houston, Alex, obviously, these moves were big, but the name on the top right column is the name that everyone will have on the mind when thinking about the Texans this year, because C.J. Stroud, as the number 2 overall pick, was a top 10 quarterback by the end of last year in the league. And the fact that Stroud has been able to right away make the impact. This was a team that, remember, last year projected 6.5. They were 6.5 win total. And I thought that, how the hell are they going to get this 7 wins? They win the division when it's all said and done. So C.J. Stroud 10-1 to win the MVP, and that's where we're looking right now. At least for me, of those awards on the right side, that would be the only one I'd even look at.
The most impressive thing with him last year is they did deal with a lot of injuries, especially on the offensive line. He was sacked 38 times, but he still always found a way. 64 passing completion. Over 4,000 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, and just 5 interceptions throughout the year. The big thing for me as well is they really struggled with their run game. They didn't have a run game. A lot fell on C.J. Stroud as a rookie, and now they bring in Joe Mixon, who I think can be a big help for them offensively. Just median in terms of offensive drives resulting in touchdowns in the pack, 19% last year. I think that is going to increase with a run game. It's hard. I mean, you want to be aware that there could be regression, but I don't think this division really, there's any threats for them there.
So with Houston, just looking at going to the schedule here more so than anything, Sean, you can put the schedule up real quick. By the way, we have our baseball numbers from behind us officially in hand, which we'll get to in first in town. Which we'll get to in a few. Dime line as always. We'll get to in a few moments. But on the Texans side of things, you bring up the word regression, Alex, and I don't know if C.J. Stroud will be the one that has regression, but with the Texans, we've talked about this with other teams. Schedules. playing a first-place schedule this year. So, after last year surprising everyone, again, a rookie head coach and Ryan's rookie quarterback in Stroud, win a division, win a playoff game, competitive until the fourth quarter in Baltimore in that divisional round game. They just couldn't score against Baltimore's defense, who had their number in both meetings a year ago. But you have a more difficult schedule than you would have expected for a team that going into year two. You have to play Kansas City on the road. That's the week before Christmas. That Saturday night game. You have to play the cross games against Dallas, where I think they're better than Dallas, but still, that's a road game in the Jerry Dome. You also have to play Baltimore again. So you get all these harder cross games that you would not. By the way, the Baltimore games on Christmas. It's a harder schedule, and I think the Texans on paper, if you just look at the roster, assuming that the health is there on the offensive line, which they've dealt with a bunch of offensive line injuries a year ago, assuming they're fully healthy at the wide receiver position. Remember, Tank Dell broke his leg at the end of the season last year. Nico Collins is still there. So they have a really good 1-2-3 receiving core to go along now with Diggs there. This team is definitely capable of winning 11, 12 games. I'm just concerned about the going with that win total, even at a 9.5 or 10s that happen to be out there. I'm just concerned with that schedule getting more difficult, that they could win this division plus 120 at 9-8. This is kind of like Atlanta. They can win it at 9-8, but I'm not sure if over 9.5 is a good bet here, just because the nature of that schedule where you're going to be a dog in Dallas, you're going to be a dog in Kansas City, and I would imagine, unless if they are even better than I think they are, and Baltimore's a little down, I would imagine Baltimore still probably would be a road favorite at the end of the year there.
The value is there. I mean, you are getting a plus price here with a team that is definitely above the other three in the division.
Yep.
So that plus 120 is the only way I would look at it betting on this team. I agree with you that 9.5, it's a tough number, and you're laying juice if you like the over, minus 130 now. So that's definitely the best way to play it, I would say, is division.
I just want to go back to the awards real quick, Alex, where you look at C.J. Stroud in the MVP market right now, and I just want to double check that I actually wrote this in my notes correctly, because Patrick Mahomes is the betting favorite to win MVP. I know this may seem a little bit bizarre for me to say this, especially coming off a year where in the regular season Mahomes was not the same guy as he normally is. Granted, we saw the real Mahomes in the playoffs, of course. But Patrick Mahomes is your betting favorite. These are numbers courtesy of the Superbook at plus 550. Josh Allen's at plus 750. Joe Burrow, who we'll get to Burrow and Allen in the next 2 weeks, Burrow's a 9-1. C.J. Stroud's the fourth shot. He's shorter than Lamar Jackson. He's shorter than Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, Brock, all those guys. The fourth shortest odds. Now, this is, to me, I agree with you that the best bet with this team is the division. Plus 120. We'll get to the other teams in the division. There's one team that's a little bit unknown that we'll get to in a little bit. And then the other one where underachiever, especially last year. I think C.J. Stroud at 10-1, even though it may seem short on the surface, I think that's fair. Now, the big thing with the MVP market, because we've talked about it a little bit during these previews, but not a ton. More likely than not, you are going to get better numbers on essentially everyone in the market at some point during the regular season. It may be week 3. It may be week 13. And as we've seen the last few years, let's take last year. Going into Christmas, Brock Purdy was minus 180 to minus 250 to win the MVP. What happened? Purdy has a horrible game against Baltimore. I didn't even think Lamar was that great in that game, but Lamar vaulted up and won the MVP, in part because of that result that Baltimore beat San Francisco. Look at Houston's back end of the schedule this year. Look at the back end. Forget Tennessee week 18. They might not even need that game. That might be a game where everyone sits, depending on seeding or if they had the division wrapped up. After that very late week 14 bye, Playoff team from last year, Super Bowl champion from last year, best team in the regular season from last year, 3 straight years. All teams with win totals projected north of 9 this year, Alex. That's your path to the MVP. I would wait on C.J. Stroud. And if Stroud is even remotely in the conversation going into the Week 14 bye, that would be the time I would hop in. Because those 3 games down the stretch, 2 of them standalone primetime holiday games too, that's a great way to steal an MVP award, even if you weren't the best player for the majority of the year.
Looking at their skill players now, we just went through those 3 wide receivers who are all very good, adding Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and then adding Joe Mixon. Does it worry you at all that he may not get that award? Because we see that happen to quarterbacks all too much. And I mean, that was kind of part of the whole argument with Brock Purdy, even going into that Ravens game, but it's everybody else around him. I know you can see the physical talent from CJ Stroud above Brock Purdy. I'm just saying, if they really mesh well and it's kind of a unit thing, does that concern you, or is that another reason why you want to wait until the end of the season?
Wouldn't worry me. I think Purdy is one of the more unique cases I think we've ever seen in the league. Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. And it was not only just Mr. Irrelevant, it's a recent Mr. Irrelevant. And I think Purdy was really fighting those factors of people still not buying him. I mean, you remember the reaction after he threw the 4 picks on Christmas against the Niners, against the Ravens. That it was basically, hey, this guy who is who we thought he was. He's not that good. It was just the narrative, like for Stroud. And look, for awards, narratives do matter. It's not an exact handicap like we're trying to handicap the Texans versus the Patriots in Week 6. Where Stroud, the narrative this year is C.J. Stroud comes into the year as a top 5 to 7 quarterback in the NFL. C.J. Stroud had one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen. It also works for in the Bryce Young discussion we had last week, where Bryce Young looks like an even bigger bust than he may be because of how great Stroud looked. I just think there's so many positive storylines for Stroud that it's like, oh, he took the next step. They improved the guys around him to help Stroud take the next step, not the guys around him are making him better. I think that's just what it is more so than anything. It's an interesting thought, interesting question. I just don't think for a guy like Purdy, or if let's say Will Levis was on Houston instead of Tennessee, right. Then maybe that's the case. But with Stroud, I think that the narratives are more positive, and that helps in award betting.
It does definitely put some pressure on him, though, to match his rookie season. Sure. So these really good numbers, I mean, he can't fall off too much for them to award him that. One
good thing I will say with Houston, there was a lot of thought that Bobby Slowick would get a head coaching job. He did not. So a second year in the same system, and Slowick, who deserves a lot of the credit for what happened there in Houston. Him and Ryan, again, what a great head coach OC combination with a defensive-minded head coach in DeMeco Ryans. So, again, I would say more so than anything, this team on the rise, just a matter of can they handle that first-place schedule after last year having a last-place schedule there in 2023. You want to move to Indianapolis?
Let's move to the Colts.
Let's move to the Colts. This is one of the more confusing teams going into the year that I have in my brain, where I think their variance is extraordinarily high. You look last year, Anthony Richardson only plays the better portion of 3 games. Gardner Minshew comes in, and the Colts are
relevant.
18 yards from winning the AFC South. Remember, that was a 4th and 1 that they couldn't convert on just a throw behind the running back. A little bit of a questionable play call from Shane Steichen, who had an incredible first year coaching the Indianapolis Colts. Alex, this is the hardest handicap team in the NFL for me, because if you told me Anthony Richardson is actually in the MVP discussion, you can go with that. It wouldn't shock me if Anthony Richardson comes out and struggles in almost his second rookie season. Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe this is a 6-win team. They had Flacco in the offseason. They really didn't do too much with just traditional free agency or trades. They lose Minshew, they lose Zach Moss. I have their top 2 draft picks up there as their biggest additions. because Latu out of UCLA is the second favorite in the Defensive Rookie of the Year market, only behind Dallas Hunter up in Minnesota. Adonai Mitchell is going to be an impact player right away at the wide receiver position out of Texas. So, Alex, this is a very complicated team right out of the gate for me with Indianapolis.
It is really complicated, especially we don't have a good sample size with Anthony Richardson. But from what I saw, I do really like him. I do think he is going to be really good. He was just so composed under pressure. And I really like their quick up-tempo offense that they had more with Anthony Richardson than so much with Minshew. So I think there is a lot of upside. I'm looking more to the upside than their floor. They have really good linemen, so they should be very good in the trenches to protect Anthony Richardson. I'd say their offensive line is right there with the Texans. The only thing that worries me is their skill position players and what we see from them. I mean, Pittman is a good wide receiver. I don't know if he is a true one. And then that is a lot of pressure here on Mitchell. But all in all, I mean, I think this team is right there in the middle of this conference and can compete with the Jags for the second place. Definitely.
Bringing up the offensive line, again, the matter of staying healthy. We know Ryan Kelly's a top-notch center. We know Braden Smith is a top 5 right tackle. Quinn Nelson, to me, is still the best left guard in the NFL when he's on the field. So you're dealing with a high-end offensive line, which helps a young quarterback. Like you said, I think this is the best offensive line in the AFC South, and honestly, it might be one of the better offensive lines in the AFC completely.
Agreed.
Jonathan Taylor's still there. We haven't mentioned his name. He just kind of shows how our brains work with running backs at this point. But Jonathan Taylor, of course, got paid last year during that holdout. Wide receiver-wise, I don't think they have a true one, but we saw Josh Downs come on the scene last year, and he produced at a high level with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Michael Pittman on a really good team, I think, would be an amazing too. But when you're dealing with 3 guys, and I think Mitchell right away makes an impact. I really do. I actually was looking at the Offensive Rookie of the Year numbers. They were long, but just, again, with the 2 quarterbacks at the top, it's very hard to justify a non-Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels bet at this point in Offensive Rookie of the Year, at least on my end. This Colt team has enough talent to be a really good team. I just wonder, because they were the natural regression candidate based off of what they did the last year. They won close games. They got blown out a lot. They are a natural regression candidate. It's hard to say they are that, though, because of the quarterback situation. When your starting quarterback played 3 games, you can't take too much from the previous season. If you look at their schedule, their first 3 weeks are difficult. We're going to learn right away, and this is for Houston as well. They play each other week 1 in Indianapolis, right out of the gate. Winner of that game is going to feel pretty darn good about themselves. Then they have to go to Indy, has to go to Green Bay week 2. That's not an easy game. And then they play Chicago and Pittsburgh back-to-back. They'll be favored in those games at home, but they're not gimme games by any stretch. They had crossed this in this division. Of course, the AFC East is where they're crossing this year. So a trip to New York, a trip to New England for them. Buffalo and Miami go to Indianapolis. Their cross games, they got pretty fortunate in their cross games because they fell to 3rd place with their cross games with that loss the final week of the season. So they get the Giants, who neither of us are high on, and they get the Broncos, who both of us think are bottom feeders this year. So weird little quirk in that because of what happened with Jacksonville and Indy ending up tied and Jacksonville having the tiebreaker. The schedule's there. This is a team I really need to see Anthony Richardson play before I make a full determination of what to do with these guys. If they start 0-2, but Anthony Richardson looks impressive, this is probably another one of those in-season overs for win total, especially if it dumps down to a 6.5. I think 7-10 to 10-7 in that range, all in play for Indy. Not strong enough to make a preseason bet on them, but in-season wise, if they start 0-2, yeah, I think that's probably a place to go, especially if Richardson looks like he's moving forward.
I agree with that. And You just sparked my interest there with Mitchell's rookie offensive
Mhm.
award. I'll have to look at that, especially just as a long shot, little pizza money. I think he's going to
Sure.
be a really good red zone threat for them and third down target. So could get a lot of catches. Could be like a Puka Nacua. But again, with Jonathan Taylor, I can't believe I didn't bring him up either. Him and Anthony Richardson have not been on the field at the same time yet because
Correct.
he was out the first few games. And then, of course, Anthony Richardson got hurt. So I am interested to see, and we're talking about that O-line. They should be able to really open up holes and get Jonathan Taylor going again.
50-1, 45-1 available on Mitchell.
Oh, I was hoping for a little more.
I was too. That's part of the reason I ended up actually not putting it up there. Latu's interesting at defensive rookie. That defensive rookie market, which we have not talked a lot about because, of course, the least amount of defensive players drafted in the first round ever in NFL draft history. Dallas Turner's the betting favorite. I don't agree with that. I really don't in Minnesota.
More because of the team that he's on, right?
I don't. You know what? It's unless if he just has just such a monster year, it's going to be hard to win that award on a 6-win team.
Correct.
Jared Verse, we brought him up when we talked the Rams. That seems like the guy I'd probably look to at 11-1, 12-1. He's going to have a big impact on that defense. But Latu is a guy who, him and Kwity Paye are probably going to be the two outside ends pass rushers for Indy. I don't have a problem if you just want to go chalk and take Latu there. 5 plus 550, 5-1. I don't have an issue with that because the Colts, again, I think they have a random ceiling, but I do think their floor is 7 games. So they're going to be competitive throughout the year. They're not going to be looked at as a bad team. Maybe looked as a mediocre team, but they're not going to be looked as a bottom feeder.
The interesting thing with this division, too, is most of these teams were very similar defensively. So really, like, looking at this, we're seeing who's going to improve offensively. But the Colts right here, 21% of their opponents' drives resulted in touchdowns, 10th in opponent yards per rush attempt, and then fell back to 17th for opponent passing yards per game. So to your point, I mean, there is definitely room for improvement there where he can step in.
Fascinating team. Win total 8.5, 35-1 to win the AFC. I don't think they're good enough to do that. Plus 150 to make the playoffs. Again, I'm gonna hold off. But there's clearly enough talent here. They have a good enough coach. And if the quarterback does look like he did and improve over this very small sample size we had, this could very easily be at the playoff team. But we're going to be saying that about a lot of these teams in the AFC where, like I said yesterday, I think 12 of the 16 teams in the AFC have legitimate arguments to be in the playoffs, and we can only put 7 of them in. So we'll go through all those in a few weeks of who we have in the playoffs between all these because we only have 2 weeks left of NFL divisions. AFC North next week, and then we conclude with the AFC East 2 weeks from now. All right, let's take a quick break, Alex. When we get back, we'll see if anything popped for us on Chris's early numbers for baseball on Friday. And we have 2 more teams to get to in this division. The Jaguars, one of the biggest disappointments last year. How do they rebound? And a new era in Nashville. We'll break it down next. Sports by the Book, South Point Studio.
From the South Point Studio, the perfect blend of sports,
But I think the Niners are going to wear them down. Detroit Pistons lost their 36 games.
comedy,
See over-under on that relationship lasting. I'm going to put mayo in the coffee.
I am beautiful.
and a whole lot of Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
Join Ryan McCormick,
That's at least 2 picks outside of our own in the first round next year. Oreo.
and host Frank Nicotero.
When I look at the clock, I go, ah!
Watch Punchlines live at noon every weekday.
Once you've satisfied your hunger, get ready for more of the hottest casino games in Vegas. Our 24-hour, 30-table non-smoking poker room proudly hosts all the most popular poker games with a variety of betting limits. Visit the poker room for a schedule of daily tournaments. Whether you're going to hold 'em or fold 'em, the best place for poker is at South Point Casino. You'll notice that our craps tables are usually the loudest in the casino. If you've never played, join one of our free craps lessons to find out what makes this game so exciting. check with the craps dealer for schedules, and give it a roll. Bingo is also an exciting way to spend your time. We offer 7 sessions of bingo every day. And each session includes a cash ball jackpot, 12 bingo games, a progressive double action game, and a $10,000 bonus coverall. Electronic units are available. If you haven't played bingo with us, give it a try today. Guests can also get in on the action at our one-of-a-kind race and sports books. 2 separate rooms designed to maximize your experience and comfort. Our sports book, with over 400 seats, puts you right in the middle of the action, 24 hours a day.
Welcome back in Sports by the Book. Jeff Parles, Alex White, happy to be with you as always here on a Thursday. Tomorrow, we go a half hour with Gone Racing going on a Friday this week. So that's what we're looking at here today.
But there will be a special to look out for.
Oh, how
if
could
they
I?
would like more?
Alex, you're going to be leading the charge with, of course, the South Point College Football Games of the Year will be out tomorrow. Be on the lookout, and then after they've been up for a little bit of time, we'll have a special. Alex White, Chris Andrews, Vinny Magliulo, the South Point Studio Sports by the Book special for the College Football Games of the Year that Chris and company put up behind us. I know I gave Chris my numbers. I apologize for poisoning the well, maybe, potentially. I don't know. I think I only had 2 numbers that may have been way the heck off. But it was fun. It was a fun exercise. I know you were, of course, you were in there in the back room when the NCAA tournament matchups came out, and you and Chris and Vinny and company made those numbers. Rob Misch wrote a great article on it as well. It was interesting, even though I wasn't in the back room, like you guys were, just going through it, and you know, it makes me think, hey, maybe some of my power ratings are okay, some of them are not so good right now.
That's right.
Entering the season, yeah, it's a fun exercise.
But yours was a lot tougher. I mean, you are starting from the beginning of the season. Mine was after a long regular college basketball season going into the tournament.
You know, it's a hard exercise regardless, I would say. But you know, you're in the point now where college football this day and age is so complex because of all the player movement. The only thing I do know, and Chris and company put up the prop yesterday of Ohio State and Georgia versus the field, which actually Ohio State and Georgia took the early money on that, and then it's been bet back to a flip after bet from minus 110 on Ohio State, Georgia to minus 115. Then people came in and bet the field at minus 105, so back to a flip right now. It'll be a very interesting handicap all college football season long with now extra teams in the playoffs. There was one number in town that I saw, by the way, for a team to make the playoff. I'm going to keep it silent for the time being because I have to figure out how much I want to bet on it. Because it was one number, I was a little bit stunned at the number. That's all I'll say. It's not one of your favorites. That's all I'll tell you, Alex White.
Not one of my favorites?
Not one of the favorites out there in the market.
Okay.
It's not one of the favorites in the market, obviously.
Okay,
so,
I'm
but it's a team to make the college football playoff.
It's also extremely hard this year with all the conference changes and how teams are going to do in their new conference, like Texas or Oklahoma. So a lot of prep goes into making those numbers. Texas,
Oklahoma, of course, SEC, Oregon, UCLA, USC, Washington, Big Ten, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado to the Big 12, as we all heard from them last week at Big 12 Media Days. All right, let's go back to the AFC South. We did Indianapolis and Houston in the first half hour. Now we go to Jacksonville next. It's always fun writing the alphabet, 3 straight letters for these cities. To say Jacksonville's end of season last year was a disappointment would be an insult to the word disappointment, Alex. Jacksonville was in complete command of, even forget just a playoff spot. Entering the month of December, they were 8-3. They were a team that we thought, all right, you know what, maybe this team makes some noise. An outside shot of getting the 1 seed still as they entered the final month of the season, where they have games against the AFC North in there. You have Tampa Bay mixed in there. but a collapse. Trevor Lawrence, yes, did get hurt at the end of the season, hurt his shoulder, didn't play against the Bucs, it didn't matter against Carolina, was not 100% week 18 against the Titans. But when you go from 8-3 to 9-8 and go from winning the division more likely to not to missing the playoffs completely, you have a lot of questions that are asked of yourselves. And for the Jags, I think even more so of the Trevor Lawrence debate, where there's a lot of debate now of, hey, how far along is this kid? Is this kid as good as we thought he was going to be? I think the answer is, at this point, no. But worthy of getting paid. Defensively speaking, they needed to change a lot of things. Ryan Nielsen comes over from Atlanta to take over the defense after Mike Caldwell did a horrible job with it last year. I still have a ton of questions. They were active in the offseason. I could only list 4 there, Alex. Gabe Davis, Mitch Morse, Eric Armstead, Darnell Savage. They made some other new moves as well. They lose Ridley in the offseason of the Titans. It's a perplexing team. Again, 2 of these teams that should be in competition, Indy and Jacksonville, a little bit perplexing for me.
It is really tough because, as you just mentioned, the last thing we saw was the collapse, and you kind of have to push that out of your mind and look at this team for what it is and, what they can be. I do think Trevor Lawrence I think he'll be okay. I still think he is a top 15 quarterback in the league. Ryan Nelson is a good addition as a defensive coordinator coming from the Falcons. Atlanta was 10th in opponent yards per game, top 10 in third down defense. The biggest concern, though, is they did a lot of he's a big man-on-man rather than zone. I don't know if that fits here with Jacksonville. Only time will tell. But, yeah, this team is right there for me with the Colts.
They also added Brian Thomas in the draft, another wide receiver, so they've remade this receiver room a little bit. Of course, Christian Kirk still there, and still overpaid him, but that's a different discussion for a different time. This comes down to a few things for me with this team. I'm not a fan of what Doug Peterson is at this point in his career. I'm not a fan of how they built this offense out more than anything. And for me, Trevor Lawrence, look, I never bought hey, he's a generational quarterback thing. Even coming out of Clemson, I never bought that. I thought, all right, ceiling top 8, top 7 guy. He's been that at times.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of tape floating around. I know social media loves Trevor Lawrence of a lot of drop passes a year ago, which there were. But at some point, yes, they won a playoff game 2 years ago, but at some point, there are so many more guys in this league that scare me. And I know this is a very cliched and maybe cop-out way to do this, Alex. I can think of 10 guys right now off the top of my head who I would much rather see if this is the old Phillip Rivers zone, as it was called back in the day. Down 4 with 90 seconds to go and 1 timeout, which we saw the Chargers with Phillip Rivers in almost, it seemed like every other week with the Chargers. There's so many guys I'd much rather see. Like if it's Jacksonville, all right, I feel pretty good. They're not going to score. I think they're not going to. My defense can hold against them. I need Trevor Lawrence to, if Jacksonville is going to win this division or make the postseason again for the second time in 3 years, I need to see Trevor Lawrence take another step forward now with this big contract. And remember, Alex, we were kind of having the discussion, and to just flip it back to Houston real quick. The conversation we had about Houston today was a similar one that a lot of people were saying going into the season with Jacksonville last year.
Yes.
Where they steal the division down the stretch to a Tennessee collapse 2 years ago. They win a playoff game that they Houston dominated Cleveland, but Jacksonville had no business beating the Chargers, as we know. I just wonder now, did the market overcorrect themselves now on Jacksonville? Where they overcorrected to, hey, not taking into account of the negative regression. Now is there a little bit of positive regression here with Jacksonville? And that's the one thing where, again, I'm not betting this. I think 8.5 is a really good number on the win total. Juiced -125. I think that's right. I think that they should be either 8-9, 9-8, maybe 10-7, 7-10 if things go wrong. I wouldn't bet them to win the division, but a +110 to make the postseason, there are worse bets to be made out here for that.
Very well said. Those are the words I was looking for. Positive regression. I do think it has been overcorrected. I mean, when you look at the start of last season, if they can keep that going, that is a playoff contending team there. I don't know if they will win the division, but could very well get a wild card spot. We haven't brought up their running back with Travis Etienne, who I do think is a very good running back. I think he needs a little bit more help, and their offensive line kind of scares me, but they weren't very good running the ball last year and just 23rd in rushing yards per game, so they need to figure out a way to get that going to take a little bit off of Trevor Lawrence. But, yeah, Jeff, this team scares me in the sense of that they are that sneaky pick that can just get by you.
This is a division where, again, these top three teams are compact by win totals, 9.5, 8.5, 8.5. It's compact. Not as compact in the odds to win the division because of what Houston did this offseason. This is a three-horse race. We'll get the final horse in a second, but this is a three-horse race between Indianapolis, Jacksonville, and Houston. It's just really figuring out of where the regression hits and who it hits. And to a negative or a positive regression, all three of these teams are capable of winning this division. I think this is the least of the three, personally, because I think Indianapolis is good. Their high-end variance is better than Jacksonville's high-end. And Houston, I think just their high-end is better than everybody's in this division. So does that mean I'm picking Jacksonville to finish third? Not necessarily.
Oh.
But I think their ceiling is the most limited of the three teams realistically in this race, Alex.
And, of course, the gap is there because, like you said, on paper, power rating these teams, I mean, the Texans are just above those two.
Oh, yeah.
But it is definitely a three-team race. A lot depends on the schedule. See how things play out.
100%. And this will be, we'll get the division orders on Saturday. Alex will go through both the AFC West and the AFC South on Saturday. We'll give you those then. So be on the lookout for where we have Jacksonville, Houston, and Indy. Can't forget the Titans, though, who I know I have finishing last in this division. The Titans, the last team up here today, as we'll roll right into it. And the market agrees with me based off that number on the bottom of your screen right now, plus 450 on Tennessee to make the playoffs. They had a bizarre offseason, where maybe it ran its course. We're not in the locker room, obviously, Alex, but firing Mike Vrabel felt like a weird to potentially desperate move from Tennessee ownership. Even though Vrabel's without a job this year, again, I still think Vrabel's the quality of a top 10 coach in the NFL. I expect him to be back next year, especially if some of these playoff projected teams underachieve. Jacksonville might not be a bad landing spot for him if they miss the playoffs yet again, actually. But then they go out, hire Brian Callahan again. His dad, Bill, of course, is the head coach with the Raiders when they made the Super Bowl in the early 2000s, one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. He followed his son, Brian, from Cleveland now to Tennessee. Of course, Brian Callahan was the offensive coordinator with the Bengals,
right?
With Burrow and company under Zach Taylor. But then Tennessee went out and made some moves that you would have expected out of teams that thought they were really close to realistically competing. Yeah, they lose Derrick Henry. We knew that was going to happen. We mentioned Danico Autry earlier. They lose Christian Fulton and some other secondary pieces as well. But they replace it with L'Jarius Sneed, who was the best piece in Kansas City secondary in a trade. They pay Calvin Ridley a ton of money to come over from Jacksonville. The Tony Pollard signing, all right, whatever. It doesn't really move the needle for me. And then Awuzie comes over from Cincinnati in that secondary. I don't know. I don't know what. It was a very perplexing offseason for a team that I don't think is particularly close. And big reason I don't think they're particularly close is I'm not buying Will Levis. We saw some good things from Will Levis last year. Arm strength's really good.
Right.
He's not afraid to put his body on the line. He's not afraid to take chances. But I think he's a turnover machine. And in a division where the rest of their talent is significant, even with the addition, still the weakest talent team. And I thought part of the reason that getting rid of Vrabel was so crazy was he always got a little bit extra out of those teams with limited quarterback play or limited talent. I don't know. 6.5 on a win total feels right for me on Tennessee. If anything, I'd look to that juiced under on the Titans here, Alex.
It really feels like their additions and subtractions were more just for show rather than actually addressing spots that they need,
Can't
right?
argue with that.
I mean, they have DeAndre Hopkins and then they bring in Calvin Ridley. I think they will be good together, but I don't know if that was the piece they needed right away. And then, of course, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard kind of switched them in. I do think Tony Pollard is pretty high up there in top running backs in the league. But yeah, I have them as bottom 3 right now in the league for this year going into it. So I definitely don't think this is a year that they're going to be able to compete for this division. And if anything, I would only look at the under for their win totals, even at 6.5.
Sean, you can throw the schedule up there for Tennessee. I will say there is a path to at least starting okay. Now, you may say, what are you talking about? They're an underdog week 1 against the Bears. They're going to be an underdog in those 2 home games against the Jets and the Packers. This goes under the category of a team that's not any good that doesn't know they're not any good yet, more so than anything. And the Jets are coming off a short week. Week 2, Green Bay. Again, will be coming off a game against Indianapolis in week 2. More likely than not, they start 0-4, Tennessee. More likely than not, they start 0-4. But look, if they somehow steal 2, where, look, you don't know what you're getting out of a rookie quarterback in week 1. Caleb Williams could play poorly, and the Bears could lose that game at home. I'm not saying they will, but they could. And then split 2 home games against 2 teams that a lot of people have projected for the postseason this year. Not impossible. It's the NFL. Happens all the time. So this may be one of those, if Tennessee gets out to a better than expected start, which quite frankly would mean 2-2, which may be a lot to ask.
I'm not banking on that.
Come under, is what I'm saying, Alex White.
I'm not. I would rather take the.
You'd rather just go to 6.5 right away.
I don't see them winning. Yeah, 1 out of the first 5, maybe even. You throw in the Colts and.
Well, it only gets harder the next 2 weeks after that.
That's right. The Bills and the Lions. So I'm just. That would concern me that you won't end up getting a better number, which is okay. And then that bet just passes and you find a better one. But I think 6.5 is a pretty good number right now. The juice, though, that might be what's kind of throwing you off. I don't think teams will take them lightly, that's for sure. I mean, they've always been a very good defensive team. Then they had Snead, of course. So they have the best safeties and cornerbacks in the division, at least. And then last year, they were so good in the red zone, 3rd in the red zone, 5th in opponent yards per rush, 14th in passing. So, I mean, I think that they'll be okay defensively and be able to hang in there. There's too many question marks on the offensive side and with Will Levis. So
it all comes back to the quarterback. All comes back to the quarterback for me. And for Tennessee, just wrong division at the wrong. And it's weird to say about the AFC South because what have we said for years? The division stinks. It's one of the weakest ones in the NFL, if not the weakest. This year, I don't know if it's overly strong, but all 3 of those top teams, except for these Titans, are realistic. Hey, this could be a 2 playoff team division because they're playing each other, because their cross games may not be the most. I mean, Indianapolis's cross games are incredible for them. They could pick up an extra 3 wins that they might not have had because of that. So this is a division where we're in agreement. This is the weakest team. This is one of the 4 teams that I don't give much of a chance of making the postseason. Hello, Denver. Hello, Las Vegas. Hello, Tennessee. And hello, one more team in the AFC East. I think we both know who I'm talking about there up in New England. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm not a buyer of Levis. This is why I don't. That's the main reason, more so than anything, why I think that under 6.5 probably still is good preseason.
He has a lot of growing to do still in this league, and hopefully they got him the right coaching staff to do that. But
we'll see. We don't know. It's an unknown. Again, first-time head coach. We don't know. We don't know if Brian Callahan's going to be amazing. We don't know if he's going to be terrible. We don't know if he's going to be mediocre. We don't know. It's the one thing, at least over the last few years, with first-time head coaches, I've just blank slate. No idea. No preconceived notions, no anything, at least on my end, when evaluating first-time head coaches.
Yeah, it's too hard. I mean, unless you have Jim Harbaugh, who we have seen.
Oh, he's not a first-time head coach.
Okay,
so yeah. But first-time head coach, like guys, first-time head coach.
Yes.
even if they're like, let's say like a college guy came over and like not Harbaugh, but let's say like Ryan Day came over. Yeah, I'd evaluate him as a first-time NFL head
Absolutely.
coach. That would just be the way that I would play it.
Yes.
All right. That's the AFC South. And that's what we got for you here today on the show. We can bring in our good friend. We gotta give him a second though to put the glasses on, get his microphone ready. Because Punchlines is coming in 2 hours and 10 minutes. Our good friend Ryan McCormick is here as always.
Yeah,
good morning, buddy.
Great show, guys. Good job. Obviously, we will have our lines of the night. Jeff will be joining us on Punchlines. So he'll have one, I'll have one, Frank will have one. We'll also be looking at stuff from the WNBA that happened last night, some first times in WNBA history. Maybe some things in the NBA with Bronny hitting his first 2 threes in Summer League. And then a bunch of other stuff, talking baseball, talking NFL. The Jaguars did release their new throwback uniforms, so we'll get to see those on Punchlines today. So come by at noon. Let us know in the comments what you think.
Very fitting for our day.
I'll throw it out real quick. I see what you did there, Alex. Fitting jerseys. Good there. I saw them. I'll save my thoughts for Punchlines. I'll give more than just that later. But there was some gentleman who waited outside the team store since 9 p.m. last night, which make better life choices. That's all I have to say on that. All right. Tomorrow, Dwayne Colucci will be here with us. There we go. Look at that. Team all in on Colucci here tomorrow. But just to remind you, Alex brought it up earlier in the show. Tomorrow, there's a Sports by the Book special tomorrow afternoon. Around 1:30 is when the expected start time will be, subject maybe to a few minutes here or there, depending on how much action is being taken behind us. Chris Andrews and company releasing their college football games of the year tomorrow. So there will be a special after the lines have been up for a little bit. Alex, Chris, Vinny, all will be here tomorrow, 1:30 in the afternoon. And, of course, be on the lookout for Punchlines later today at noon. Alex, good work. We'll see you again tomorrow afternoon.
Yes.
And I'll see you all tomorrow morning. Sports by the Book, South Point Studio.